This is a special meeting of the Board of Education. Can we all stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Because this is a special meeting, the agenda is already set, and we can't change it per se. So the way that it'll go is first we're going to have a public hearing, and then we're going to take up the action item. There is a resolution that is before us. It has been published. It was a part of our agenda. With that, I'd like to recognize our translator. Perfect.
Hola, buenas tardes. Quería decirles a todos, no sé si alguien necesita traducción en español. Yo voy a estar sentada aquí, de este lado, y si alguien más se acerca, pues trataré de resumir lo que vayan diciendo de la mejor manera posible. Entonces, nada más para que sepan que voy a estar ahí. Gracias.
Gracias. So with that, the first part is we will take comment from the public. Yeah, can you get me the latest, if there's any additional? We're just waiting to see how many speakers we have so that we can properly decide how to conduct business. There are currently 9 speakers signed up to speak, so we will take them in order, as is per our custom. First, KDU. And if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to, the next speaker will be Jason Auerbach. The speaker after that will be Bob Tuthill. If you wouldn't mind standing over here so that we're ready to take one speaker right after the other. And there would be, as per normal practice, there's a 3-minute limit on comments. Ms. Yu.
Thank you. Good evening. For the record, my name is Katie Yu, and I'm speaking tonight as a parent of 3 children in the Greenwich Public School System, 2 of whom are at Parkway and 1 who is at Western, and not in my PTA capacity as Western Middle School PTA co-president. Over the years, I've had the opportunity to attend many Board of Ed meetings, and I've been privy to the discussions, feasibility studies, architectural plans, community comments and concerns, and more conversations about the New Leb building project. There are certain decisions that define a town. I share everyone's disappointment that our state's legislature can't get its act together and pass the budget, but too much hard work and thought has gone into this project to allow it to be thwarted by this unexpected situation. Tonight, it is before you to consider asking the town bodies to release the funds now for the project without waiting for the passage of the state budget for the back-end reimbursement. As we all know, this will prevent needless escalation costs and additional delays in opening the new school. I know that others share my sentiment that this project benefits our whole town as part of the state-approved racial balance plan, but most importantly, it benefits the students at New Lebanon, as well as those students and families who value neighborhood schools. In closing, I urge you tonight to first consider the why. Thank you for your time.
Jason Auerbach.
Thank you to the members of the Board of Education for your time this evening. My name is Jason Auerbach. I am a member of the RTM and I am on the Education Committee. I am also the father of 3 sons in the Greenwich Public Schools. I'm a coach in town, and many of the kids I coach attend or have attended New Lebanon. I am a strong supporter of neighborhood schools. I am speaking tonight to ask that you do not get ahead of the state on committing to fund the building of a new facility at New Lebanon. At the last board meeting, Peter Bernstein called for the town of Greenwich to fund the project immediately without waiting on the state budget process. Should the town of Greenwich fund the project, the governor, who has publicly stated he is against the grant, will have the ammunition he needs to say that, quote, Greenwich has already agreed to fund the new building without state funds. As you all know, Connecticut is in a dire financial state. We are the only state in the country without a budget, going on 3 months and facing major fiscal challenges. Committing now to cover the cost is guaranteed in the current political atmosphere to interfere with the grant process. Some of you may think of me as a candidate for the Board of Education, but I am also a voting member of the RTM. I heard last week that all the conditions of the BET had been met for the project to move forward. This is simply not the case. The state has not approved the $23 million to be released to help fund this $37 million project. We have committed to funding $14 million for New Lebanon, not $37 million. Voting to approve and fund the project immediately amounts to a $23 million tax increase for Greenwich taxpayers, unavailable in the budget and equivalent to 10% of the current Board of Education budget. I believe in a New Lebanon, and I am prepared to immediately tackle this problem in a way that best meets town needs. Should the state honor its commitment to fund New Lebanon, we have the green light to move forward. Should the state decline to honor that commitment, we must consider other options to provide the kids of Byram with the school they need in a fiscally responsible manner. Should the board preempt the state's funding process and refer it to the RTM,
30 seconds.
You should expect a no vote from me and expect many other RTM members to vote no as well. If the grant is not approved by the state, we will not be putting our taxpayers on the hook for an additional $23 million in tax revenue to build a $37 million school. Fiscal discipline on the part of the BOE and all members of town government is critical to keeping Greenwich in a sound financial state. Again, approving a $23 million tax increase to build a new school is not a wise decision. There has to be another way to make it better for the kids while not hurting the taxpayers' wallets and also supporting neighborhood schools. I am willing to help figure this out. I hope you all are too. Thank you.
Bob Tuthill, then Lucy Brennan Brockle, and then Matt Pop.
My name is Bob Tuthill. I live at 64 Mead Avenue. I'm the District 4 Education Delegate. I've been in the RTM 33 years. And I was on the original feasibility group that studied whether or not to have a New Lebanon. I know it's complicated, but the important thing to understand is this. If we were, apropos of Mr. Auerbach's just comment, remember that for any money to be spent, we would have to approve it in the RTM, and the next RTM meeting is Monday, October 23rd. The 24th is the last day that you can get the prices that you have right now in, the bids. So we're talking about 3.5 weeks coming in the future. I think I support the idea of bringing this before the RTM. It would have to be approved by the RTM and by the BET, and the BET would meet before or sometime afterwards. In other words, normally things are approved by the BET and they come to the RTM, but we are allowed, if it's put on the RTM call, to pass something that hasn't come to the BET, subject to their approval later. I'm suggesting to you that I want to make something really clear that you understand it. I've spoken as recently as the first Monday in April with Dr. Korda and with Jim Hickory, who was at that time the managing director of operations. And both of them confirmed what we had been told in the past by previous administrations, and I have not had the opportunity to meet the newest here now yet, but they have confirmed that if we do not, and the state doesn't come up with the money, and we don't come up with the money to fund the school as proposed, that we will have to cross-town bus in Dr. Cordes, which means not only the west to the east, but the east to the west and the north to the south. In other words, we're going to have to bus all over. And I want you to think about this real careful. What do you think it's going to mean to real estate values in town? Even if you don't have any children and you're not concerned about the school system, think about the real estate values. Think about, take a look at a Greenwich time on a Friday night, and you will see ads, a few of them, in the Greenwich paper for Stamford. And look at some of these houses in Stamford. They're nice, and the prices are really a bargain. The reality of life is we need to protect the reputation and the aura of Greenwich. So make sure that we build this New Lebanon here, over here, as proposed by the
Thank you, Mr. Tuttle.
Building Committee. Thank you.
Ms. Van Broek. Then Matt Pop, and then we'll hear from Karen Hirsch.
Hello, my name is Lucy Von Brockel. My family bought our home in Byram in 2008, a few weeks before my niece began kindergarten here at New Leb. At the time, the school had a pre-K classroom, but was already experiencing the effects of overcrowding. By the time my own daughter began kindergarten in 2011, the pre-K was gone. My daughter was in a class that was well over the district cap, and the stage in this room was being used for pull-out classes. In 2014, my son started kindergarten here and was in the first cohort to be shuttled off-site to Bank. For some perspective, my niece is now at Greenwich High School, and my daughter just started middle school at Western. For years, we've listened to various committees and boards, such as this one, lament the plight of the children in this school, and then pass the buck onto another committee or board. And what have we gotten for it? Bad press, lower property values, epic amounts of time and money wasted, increased segregation and economic isolation, and most importantly, a decade's worth of elementary students that are forced to learn in an environment that is inadequate and not like the other students in the district. I'm a Reading Champions tutor here at New Leb, and when I work with kids, we sit in the hallway where we're constantly distracted by kids who are going back and forth to class. This is the opposite of equity in this town. Meanwhile, members of this board and the building committee, administrators, parents, teachers, students, architects, and consultants have crossed every T and dotted every I, made changes to suit every stakeholder with a complaint, met every requirement of the RTM and BET and selectmen and the state, and here we are, wasting more time and money, leading on another decade's worth of families and passing the buck again. And I'll remind you that while Byram needs this larger school for its pre-K, room to grow, and racial balance, it was certain members of this board that fought for the district to apply for a unique school status and the state grant, which ultimately put us in this precarious and unfortunate position. It's time that this board and the BET and the RTM acknowledge the fact that you and they made the decisions that brought us to this point and are wholly responsible for seeing it through. You need to fight tooth and nail for these children and get this funding released now. We're your constituents. We're citizens of this town. We are voters and taxpayers. Please don't let us down. Thank you.
Good evening, Matthew Pop, 54 Mead Ave. I'm a landscape architect. I don't support funding of this school. We were told over and over again that we had to deal with the state. The state would give us $23 million, and we would build a school larger than we would ever need. We also were told that this school was going to reduce racial imbalance, but we know that's not true. If you look in the 2004 racial balance plan, your own plan, it says that this school will not reduce the racial imbalance. The Metis study clearly states that no one, or very few, people from the eastern side of school are going to shift to this side of the town. Your own plan says the racial balance will fail. What happens then when a racial balance plan fails and you have a school back here? Are we going to require busing after that with the school? If Greenwich fully funds the school, if Greenwich fully funded this school right from the start, we would have a different project. We wouldn't have a school that would have room for 8 buses and 2 vans. We wouldn't need 21 classrooms. And we wouldn't be putting a school in a substantial location in a hole next to the highway. I'm concerned that this school would put our funding from the state at risk. This is a $23 million gamble that you're betting on. Without the state funding of this project, how much will our taxes increase? Or will other services be cut? I'm also concerned with declining enrollment. Parkway School is about 50% full. I think it's 56% full. Building this school, an oversized school, will it result in the closing of Parkway School? I think you want to know that answer before voting tonight. Will it close another school? Thank you.
Karen Hirsch, then it'll be Dana Rodriguez, Alex Pop, and then Claire Kilgallen.
Good evening, Chairman, Chair, members of the Board of Ed, public. My name is Karen Hirsch, President of PTA Council. We've often been told to dress for success, to dress for the job that we want, not the job we have. Think about the meaning behind that. Oftentimes our physical appearance or surroundings can have a great impact, both positive and negative, on our mental and physical performance. One need not look too far to find countless studies that show student outcomes can be tied to the educational environment and facilities that they learn in, the clothing, if you will, in this scenario. There are also countless studies showing that initial financial investments in school facilities can lead to long-term growth in neighboring property values and beyond. We are pleased to see that the Board of Education is focusing on the needs of all of our schools and will be presenting the KG&D facilities assessment and master plan to the community next week. Their initial presentation speaks to the fact that all of our educational facilities need to be upgraded, and we look forward to learning more about how the district plans to actualize this. However, while we as a district have a responsibility to each and every individual who lives and learns in Greenwich, it should be beyond apparent that New Lebanon School should be an immediate priority from a facilities standpoint and as a key part of the state-approved district's racial balance plan. I should not have to remind you that PTA Council has been discussing the overcrowding at New Lebanon with you since 2011 or earlier, meaning that the students that began kindergarten that year have already moved on to middle school with no sign of a new school in sight. We are aware that improving the quality of school facilities is an expensive undertaking. However, the benefits of such investments often surpass the initial fiscal costs. A large body of research over the past decade and longer has consistently found that school facilities impact teaching and learning in profound ways. And when positive impacts of facility improvement on teachers and students are translated into increased achievement, the rewards far outweigh the cost of that investment. As you discuss the topic this evening, please remember that we truly are not simply talking in terms of dollars and cents here. We are talking about investing in the educational future of our students, many of whom have spent years learning in a suboptimal environment. Once again, I stand here reiterating PTA Council's profound support for New Lebanon School, their PTA and community. The board has already voted and made it a commitment to build an educational facility that would meet the needs both of the current and future New Lebanon community, allowing them to have an educational facility commensurate with the other elementary schools in town. We urge you to insist that Greenwich honor that commitment and begin work to bring the school community together in a single facility. We are cognizant that school facility divides continue to persist and that you are looking to address that at all of our schools, and that funding from the state is in a holding pattern. However, the classroom environment in which our students learn should reflect what we expect of them. In other words, if we want kids to succeed, then we must provide them with the necessary infrastructure clothing, if you will, to do so. Thank you.
Dana Rodriguez, and then Claire Kilgallen. I'm sorry, Alex Pop, then Claire Kilgallen.
Hello, my name is Dana Rodriguez, and I'm co-president of the New Lebanon School PTA. New Lebanon families, will you please stand? Todas las familias de la escuela, por favor, levántense. I'm speaking on behalf of New Lebanon families to ask you to make a request to the BET. Ask them to release the appropriated funds for the New Lebanon School project. We are shovel-ready, and yet nothing has been done. This community has been through enough. I have had countless conversations with the school administration, teachers, families, and children who have all been looking forward to this school year. Why? Because it was finally going to be drama-free. But no, here we are again, having yet another meeting about this long overdue project. Parents have told me they are fed up with the political drama. They want to know what you will do if this project doesn't go forward. Will our children get bused around town? Will we lose our neighborhood schools? My daughter started here in 2012 in kindergarten, which back then was in this building and not off-site. She's now a 5th grader. Since 2012, we've been through residency verification, made the difficult decision to move kindergarten off-site, had debates about moving our 4th graders to Western Middle School for their final year of elementary school due to major overcrowding. We've had several debates to keep our kids on-site as opposed to moving them into modulars at Western. In addition, many of our families chose to leave New Leb because they can't count on stability for their children. We are all fed up. We want a year to focus all of our energy on providing the best education for all of our wonderful, diverse children. That is the PTA's mission. Through all this drama, our children have been thriving because our community has stuck together. We're strong. This is a testament to our incredible administration and our teachers who don't want to teach anywhere else but New Lebanon School, despite the inadequate space conditions they have to endure. But enough is enough. We can't let politics get in the way of all the work that has been done thus far to make this project come to fruition. And most importantly, we can't let it get in the way of what the children deserve. A new state-of-the-art building that includes the appropriate amount of classrooms, adequate common spaces, reestablishes pre-K, and is built for the next 50+ years. Please ask the BET to release the funds and build the school.
Alex Pop.
Board of Education members, my name's Alex Pop. I'm a New Lebanon parent and I'm a teacher at Riverside School. I am in favor of a right-size neighborhood school, and if I think we went that channel, the school probably would have been built by now. But just a couple of points I want to mention. First, we want to remember that it's a $23 million grant. It's not a loan. Secondly, the town probably would have never funded a $38 million school project. Third, I think it's wrong to suggest that the building is being built to address racial imbalance. It's an overcrowding issue. I hear that over and over, even tonight. All this CGA written testimony of our elected officials, the PTA, the Greenwich community, all point that it's a space issue. Even the building committee wrote a letter to the Greenwich Times that confirmed that. The fourth point is district data shows that replacing our magnet programs at imbalanced schools doesn't solve racial imbalance. District has no documented evidence this ever worked. Now, like my brother said, parents from Eastern Greenwich schools aren't going to send their children across town, and no one believes that's going to work. The meta survey is accurate. The fifth point is the district chart that was sent to DAS states there's 11 elementary schools that has over 5,200 seats of capacity. And based on last week's enrollment report, there's a surplus of 950 seats. So that calculates to 82% utilization rate. But the racial balance plan states the target is 95%. So New Leb is going to grow the capacity by at least 95 seats. So when does capacity get addressed by the school? And I am concerned, like others, that Greenwich is going to be building a larger school and eventually wind up closing a smaller school. Our taxpayers are funding inefficient school systems, and I'm really concerned that we're making the same mistakes that Wilton made last year. The sixth is that all of our consultants have overestimated enrollment. And I just want to highlight the demographic study that came out 2 months ago in July. It forecasted 100 more kindergarten students than there actually are. That's hard to believe because back in spring, the district was well aware that the kindergarten enrollment was going to be substantially smaller. It's just hard to believe that they published that report.
30 seconds.
And so I wonder, why a contingency plan wasn't constructed back in last December, last winter, when our governor said that he wasn't going to fund the project. Now those costs are probably being escalated. So, maybe we ought to consider starting a contingency plan tonight also. But thank you. I appreciate your time.
Ms. Kilgallen, then Claire Ball, then Andrea Kassenvaz. Thank you.
Good evening, Chairman Scher, members of the board, Deputy Carabillo, Superintendent Carabillo. My name is Claire Kilgallen. I'm co-president of the New Lebanon PTA, and I thank you for your continued support of the New Lebanon School Project. Don't delay the start of the construction any further. Do not let the bids expire a month from today and stall this project even further. To take a memorable quote from the TV show Game of Thrones, the North remembers, New Lebanon remembers. New Lebanon remembers that as far back as 2000, the facility's deficiencies were known to the administration and the district. New Lebanon remembers that we are talking about basic, everyday educational space. This is not an enrichment or nice-to-have situation. We don't have enough space for educational instruction, a proper-sized cafeteria, or a media center, a computer room, a gym, special education, and the list goes on and on. New Lebanon remembers that the sorely needed new building was pushed to the back burner for the MISA project. New Lebanon remembers the hundreds of students zoned for New Lebanon over the years who, due to the insufficient building and the unknowns surrounding this project, opted to magnet to other Greenwich public schools. New Lebanon remembers the 2014 Greenwich Public Schools report to this board, quote, "There is insufficient space at New Lebanon to accommodate students residing in the neighborhood, let alone magnet students," end quote. That is still true today. New Lebanon remembers that it lost its pre-kindergarten 6 years ago. We are in our 4th year of kindergarten off property to alleviate the situation. New Lebanon remembers that the 2014 cross-functional feasibility team that created the ed specs approved by this board included 2 incumbent members of the BET, and that those BET members were the 2 people who made and seconded the motion to send the ed specs to you for your approval. You've had buy-in from this town from day one. We remember that the new Lebanon pre-K through 5 will provide a right-sized school. 7 times 3 equals 21. 7 grades, 3 sections equals 21 standard-sized rooms. It will help allow for magnet students as a component of the racial balance plan, address the achievement gap, and bring the building up to standard sizes. New Lebanon remembers that everybody having authority over this project has approved it. We remember the groundbreaking was to take place in July, that the backup was September 20th, and here we are looking at a deadline on the 24th. If the funds are not released, the project timeline will slip. We remember the money was fully appropriated last year as a requirement and precondition to apply for the grant. We remember the written conditions of the Finance Board were met in May and June of this year. You are here to look out for the best interests of the students. Move this project through the town process, release the funds. Lastly, we remember the children of this neighborhood and district who deserve for this town to do right by them. Advance this project and get the funds released. Remember the children.
Karen Ball, and then Andrea Kassenvaz.
Good evening. My name is Karen Ball. I have 2 children in the Greenwich Public Schools. I work at Eastern Middle School, and I have seen some of you recently. I live here. Had I had the option to send my children here, I would have. I couldn't and make it to work on time. New Lebanon has been substandard for decades. This is not fair to our community. It is not fair to the children in my neighborhood. My next door neighbor's children had to move to Glenville because there was not room. 2 children. This is ridiculous. We live 2.5 blocks from this school, and they can't walk to their own neighborhood school. This is crazy. It's because we haven't invested in this school as we should have. All of the information has been in front of the town and the boards for years. We need this facility to come up to code, to be the same as everybody else. We see test scores and everybody freaks out about test scores. Oh my God, the children aren't doing well. Well, how can they when extra help happens in a hallway? Are you kidding me? I mean, we're having some of the same problems at Eastern, don't get me wrong, because we're swimming in children too. But if you guys don't do something about this, when you have everything in front of you and everything's ready to go, then we are going to have to go to busing. And I can't wait for the parents at Eastern to find out that, oh, the $1 million houses that they've built over there so their kids can go to Riverside and Eastern, well, gee, now you have to get on a bus and go across town. We've had enough problems with the buses at the high school. The traffic is going to be insane if we have to throw more buses on the road because we're not willing to step up to the plate. Now is the time. We have to. This is unconscionable. I will leave it at that because everybody else has given you all the details. Good night.
Andrea Casson-Vaz, and then we will have Joseph Kantorski.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Andrea Casson-Vaz. My history with New Lebanon School goes back to 2001 when my son started here in a split kindergarten class. There were 2.5 classes. That was also the case the previous year. So overcrowding is not a new thing. I was fortunate enough to work here for 5 years, starting in about, I think, 2010, part-time. I witnessed the use of closets, literally the laminator room, tiny spaces for standardized testing for students, for extra help. I work in the media center. Our media center was used constantly for small group instruction, for ALP, for meetings, for one-on-one instruction with paraprofessionals and their students. The stage was used for physical therapy. Every spare corner of this building has been utilized in one way or another because there's just not enough space. There's not enough classrooms. I now work at Glenville School, and I really don't see that there's an enrollment decline because Glenville's pretty much bursting at the seams too. They were thought about taking our computer lab away, innovation space, to be used as a classroom. That was a potential issue that didn't come to pass, but the classes are big and the school is full. And that's a regulation size school that was rebuilt in 2009, on schedule, no delays. I really have to say that my frustration as a homeowner in this neighborhood, I'm a past president of the PTA here, I worked here, I love this school. The school is wonderful, the teachers are incredible, the administration is wonderful. The fact that this project could have been done well in advance of this budget thing that just kind of came out of the woodwork, if the obstruction of the plans had not happened for 2 years, 3 years, the meetings, the unnecessary going over the same stuff with the old studies and the this and the that, if that hadn't happened, we would have been on schedule and this building would have been built already. It would have been done. The kids would be done. We wouldn't have this meeting right now. And so it's frustrating to me in so many ways, and to think about a projection of busing kids and not having neighborhood schools and having redistricting all around is just something that nobody wants. It's going to destroy our property values, and it's going to destroy the character of our neighborhoods. This is an awesome neighborhood. People want to move here. People want to go to this school. Build the school. They'll come. I swear they will. I came 20 years ago. I'm so happy to be here. Build it already, build it.
Joseph Kantorski.
That's a tough act to follow. My name is Joe Kantorski. I've been in Byram resident since 1985. And I would like to read an excerpt from a letter from Dr. Korda, dated January 27th, 2017. And towards the end of his letter, he said, the issue in this entire discussion centers on the following. 1, the Greenwich Public Schools submitted a plan to address racial imbalance in its schools to the State Board of Education and to the Commissioner of Education. 2, after careful review and vetting, that plan was approved. 3, the determination was made that the school district qualified for funding. 4, acting on that information, the school district engaged in a lengthy process of developing plans and specifications for the construction of a new school that will provide adequate space to accept students from outside of the New Lebanon school attendance area as a critical component of our racial balance plan. 5, all necessary documents were submitted to the appropriate authorities. The director of the Office of School Construction Grants and Review completed 3 reviews to review costs and description of this project and the other projects before submitting them to the Commissioner of Administrative Services for approval. Commissioner Curry, in a letter addressed to Governor Malloy on December 15, 2016, stated, quote, all of the enrollment projections were determined to be acceptable to the Commissioner of Administrative Services. All required data has been submitted for each project and nothing remains outstanding. This was in January of this year. All projects are submitted in accordance with statutory and regulatory authority. The New Lebanon School Construction Project was included in the school building project priority list. I think it was Yogi Berra who said it's deja vu all over again. I think it's time that we own up to the fact that 50 years from now, someone's going to say, what the hell were they thinking? And why didn't they do the right thing for the kids of Byram? Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to address the board on the subject that's before us? If you could identify yourself.
Hi, my name is Jessica Von Brockel, and I'm a parent here at New Leb. My son's a 5th grader, and my daughter's at Greenwich High School, just started this year. I just wanted to, I know that there are people in the neighborhood who don't want to build a big building, and I understand that. And I know that we're never going to find the perfect solution. It's not going to happen, right? But the town of Greenwich has to take responsibility for the people in the town. We as a community have to recognize that we have an infrastructure and it needs to be maintained. So we had a firehouse, we had a police station, we have other schools that have been in difficult circumstances, and it's not fun that we have to spend the money, but we have to spend the money. We have to deal with it. So I know it's not a good position for you guys to be in, but I think it's really important that you get our town to take responsibility. So many people in this town fought against redistricting. For whatever reasons, people didn't want to come here from the other end of town, or people didn't want to leave our end of town to go somewhere else. I don't think that's going to change, and people really are going to be unhappy. But when the town and the board said, let's not redistrict, you kind of put us in this position where we don't have much of a choice. We have to do what's right here in Byram. And if I'm not mistaken, there are apartment buildings, large projects being considered right now for the western end of town. It's just going to keep getting bigger over here. So I don't really know where else we can go. So I know it's not pleasant, and I know it's not ideal for everyone, but I don't really think we have much choice at this point, and the town has to take responsibility. And it's a pretty fancy town. I think we can probably handle it. So thank you.
Ms. Large.
I'm actually not from New Lebanon. I live in Glenville. And for those that remember, prior to Glenville's construction, our children went to school in what seemed like a warehouse. I moved here 16 years ago with infants and made the decision to send our children to Glenville because we loved the diversity and the exposure to the real world. At that time, we were the youngest family in our neighborhood and the only folks with young children attending Glenville. Then, something really magical happened. After a lot of debate and understated struggle, we received a new building. And folks that never imagined sending their children there started to. Now, as my third child attends the 4th grade, there are roughly 8 to 10 children at the bus stop. And more families are moving their families from other parts of the town to live in my neighborhood so they can go to Glenville. The result, a well-diversified school, property values that have gone up, and the demand to attend Glenville has risen tenfold. The bottom line, build a new school. You will enrich the town. Thank you.
Kelly Gilmore. I'm a parent of a New Lebanon student.
I'm sorry, could you say your last name again?
Gilmore.
Gilmore. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. My son is in 2nd grade now. We had to split his 1st grade class. He was in a larger class. They started with 2 teachers. They moved to 3 teachers. His class was put at the other end of the school, away from the other 1st graders when they made that determination. I answer questions constantly to my son. Why is my school the way it is? Why couldn't I be with my 1st grade class? Why is my 2nd grade class so big this year? It's very frustrating to know that the funds have been set aside, and it's really heartbreaking to me that my son might not get the quality of school that he deserves and that all of the students involved in this school deserve. So that's all I'm asking. We have the funds set aside. Can we please use them? Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to address the board on the subject that's before us? With that, we'll close public. I'm sorry. Yes?
My name is Oscar Rodriguez. I'm a Byram resident, PTA member, chairman of the BNA, current chairman of the BNA. So I had something kind of written that I wanted to go through, but I think I'm just going to speak from the heart. It's been a couple of years since I think I've been in front of most of these board members. I think my little joke is here. I think when I started speaking, I had hair. And as you can see, I don't have much hair left anymore. I think that there can be no debate that we need a new school. I think that's clear. And what has happened through the years is that we've gone through all of these processes, various reviews, and done really everything that has been asked of us, whether it's our community being supportive, whether it's the Board of Education, having the proper hearings and listening from the public, getting all that information, everything that we had to do in front of the state to be able to present the plan that would satisfy the racial imbalance that they say that we have. And here we are, still trying to decide what we should be doing. The money has been set aside. The state politics seem to be getting in the way. And in the end, the children are the ones who suffer. I have 2 children in this school. I want them to succeed. I was hoping my daughter would be able to see a new school, and that's not going to happen. And at this point, I'm not sure if I have much faith that my son, who's in 1st grade, will be able to benefit from a new school. But regardless of that, our community is thriving. There are many young families in my neighborhood who I'm hoping will have the benefit to be able to go to a New Lebanon school. So tonight, I'm asking you, we have this opportunity, and if we lose this opportunity, it seems that the only alternative will be redistricting. And that would mean the loss of valued neighborhood schools and children being bused all over the place. We can't wait any longer. We will not wait any longer. The opportunity to move this project forward is right in front of us. And it starts right here, right now, with all of you members of the Board of Education of the town of Greenwich. Please do the right thing. Ask the town of Greenwich to release the funds so that we can build the school and get this community in our town, and more importantly, all children, in a better situation for the future of our community. Thank you very much.
Anyone else want to address the board? With that, we'll close the public hearing. Now before us is a motion. I'll read the motion. Yeah. Hold on. Yes, I know. Thank you. The motion's been published, but I'll recognize Mr. Bernstein to read the motion.
So I move to request that the BET release the conditions on the funding for the New Lebanon School project and seek affirmation of such action with the RTM in order to allow the project to move forward while continuing to pursue state reimbursement under the Diversity School Grants Statute.
Second.
Discussion. Yes, Mr. Bernstein.
Thank you. Bear with me, I've got a lot to say, and this is the forum to say it. First, I want to thank all the people who've come out tonight, our BET members, current and future, the building committee members that are here, and all of the community people that have spoken. Obviously, we've heard from a lot of people, and it's important to keep doing that. So in my mind, the real purpose of this meeting is actually to help spark a dialogue with the BET and the RTM regarding the construction of the New Lebanon School project. We all have a shared responsibility to the town. As I mentioned during our meeting in September, this project is being held hostage by the dysfunction in Hartford and the governor's lack of understanding of the need for this project and the community that it serves. To put it simply, each party here has a specific role to play. The role of the Board of Education is to set policy. In this case, the Board of Ed determined that a new school was badly needed and educational specifications were approved. Under the town charter, the Board of Education must separately approve the architect and the design. It has done all of those items. The New Lebanon Building Committee's job under the town charter is to construct the building according to the educational specifications. The building committee selected an architect, developed plans, hired a construction manager at risk, and collected all of the necessary governmental approvals. The construction is on hold due to financing. That's the only impediment. The BET is the finance arm of the town. They made a determination to place 2 conditions on the funding for this project, and as written, those conditions have been met. I'm actually going to give you a copy of the conditions. The conditions taken straight from the BET minutes from March 21st, so you'll see the front page there and then the page of the conditions, which I believe is page 6. And they're published on the Town of Greenwich website for anybody that wants to follow along. Were approved by the BET at a subsequent meeting, so we do our meetings, we have minutes, and all town bodies approve those minutes. So they had an opportunity to change them if they wanted, they did not. So the 2 conditions are as follows: OSF approval for reimbursement of the construction project and construction bids for the project. Those were the conditions, the only conditions. OSF is the Office of School Facilities, also has a new name but unimportant, sent an approval letter on May 10th, 2017. So, condition 1 met. Condition 2, bids for the project were received on June 2nd, 2017, and those bids actually have since been turned into a draft gross maximum price by the construction manager. So we know the building can be built on budget and on time. Those conditions both have been met. But there seems to be this continuing misunderstanding that the conditions really meant there would be no release of them until the governor's signature was wet on the bonding bill. So one of the things you learn in law school, and I'm sorry, Debbie, I know you don't like it when I get all lawyerly, is that a contract's meaning is to be taken from what's contained in the four corners of the document. The same principle holds true for statutory interpretation. Courts generally consider that the plain meaning of a statute, so that a reasonable person would understand them. In any reasonable sense, those conditions as set by the BET have been met. Conjecture about intent to wait to the contrary. If the BET wanted to set the conditions to be contingent on the governor's signature, it would have completely been in their purview to do so, and they have done things similar in previous projects. They did not write it as such for this, and they can't now change it after the fact. Now, the RTM's role is to approve the town budget. They approved the New Lebanon project without any conditions as a capital item. By the way, the RTM can't actually condition it. What they can do is approve or take money away. That is the role of the RTM. The money's been appropriated, it was fully voted on, and it passed. Now, I've heard it said that RTM approval was subject to the same conditions as the BET. Well, those conditions were met. But again, it appears that people think that the governor's signature on the bond bill was a condition for the RTM. That's not what they approved. That's not actually something they could do. The money was approved without condition. And there is no vote. That's how our government bodies act. There's no vote showing otherwise. The impediment to this funding at this point is the BET conditions, which, as I've said, have been satisfied. Even so, what was said is if there were issues with funding from the state, discussions would take place with the appropriate bodies. In this case, the BET and the RTM, regarding moving the project forward. That is where we are right now. That is the purpose of this meeting, to kick off those discussions. So continuing to wait on Hartford has several risks, with the two primary risks being money and time. For money, the cost of rebidding is in the neighborhood of $60,000, and each month of delay is around 4% of the project cost. That's roughly $100,000 a month. Additionally, there's the likelihood that the cost of the bids will increase, especially with winter right around the corner. We've already asked them to extend their bids once beyond the 90 days. 90 days is about as far out as you can push a bid. We've asked them for another 30 days, so we're now at 120 days, which expires on October 24th. To steal a line from the Game of Thrones, which I also love, winter is coming. We'd be naive to expect that the bids would remain the same because of that condition. So the additional cost from the delay is not actually something that the current budget could absorb without risking the adequate contingencies that we have. By the way, contingencies is something that has doomed all of the previous projects in town and was a learning that this building committee took forward. We don't want to go over budget. So there needs to be a discussion at the BET of whether they are ready, willing, and able to take this risk, but more importantly, fund against it. In terms of time, we are already delayed several months by the antics in Hartford, to the point where we started with a projected move-in date of August 2018. We sit here today, it's not a year away, right? A little less than a year away, we would have been in a new building. Now, but that move-in date, now, if we could move forward with the bid we have in hand, we would be lucky to have a move-in date of December 2018. Even then, not done, by the way, I want to note that. Now, I'd be hard-pressed to give you a date if we move past it. And even if we got the shovels in the ground now and we were able to get the kids in the school by December 2018, the final site work wouldn't be done until June of 2019. And again, that's shovels in the ground basically anytime between now and mid-October. And again, this is if we don't let those bids expire on October 24th. This school was promised to the community more than 5 years ago, discussed more than 10 years ago, and this is a school for all of Greenwich. So, are we willing to risk more money and more time? I also want to take a couple of minutes to discuss some of the misconceptions that have been circulating, some of which were repeated here tonight. There's little question that we need a new building, and the current plans are the right ones for a school for 50 to 75 years in the future. Now, there are some who say that there are already too many empty seats in our system, so a new building is unnecessary. That runs completely contrary to the opinion of the town that says that we want to support neighborhood schools. This message resonated loud and clear from the racial balance process that began in 2012. The seats are spread throughout the district. This is not talking about one empty building. That's not where we are. And there is not enough capacity in the system that anyone could say that we should close a school. That is nothing but a scare tactic. I do not support closing schools, and let me emphatically state that we need each and every one of our vibrant 11 elementary schools. In fact, despite the conditions happening here, there's amazing learning that goes on, and it's a testament to the teachers and the administration that are here that it happens. I give them a lot of credit. But if we do want neighborhood schools, and I certainly do, you're going to see spaces throughout the system as populations ebb and flow in the neighborhoods. It's been noted, Glenville, if you build it, they will come back. They did, in droves, still coming. So those people who promote the message of too many seats really can't have it both ways and then argue we should somehow right-size our neighborhood schools or not have any capacity at all. We need capacity in the system to avoid constant redistricting, or even worse, the forced busing that Hartford now wants to impose on Fairfield. There are questions of if we build a new school, how big a school do we need? As it turns out, we actually need a school of the size that was designed and approved by the state and this board. 50 magnet seats are spread throughout the building, and they don't actually add to the number of classrooms or common area. You need those. Those are two of the critical reasons why a new school was necessary to begin with. 3 classrooms for each grade. Pretty much what we have in most of our elementary schools is what is needed and necessary. 2 classrooms for each grade would be imprudent and irresponsible and do nothing to resolve any overcrowding issue. We would still need these classrooms for pre-K through 5. And pre-K, by the way, needs to be back in the building. It was raised to the state as a way to raise achievement, and it brings in magnet students, and I'm a testament to that. We went to Hamilton Avenue for the pre-K program and stayed for a number of years. Cutting classrooms through the magnet program, I want to make that very clear. I was a magnet family, so I speak from what I know. Cutting classrooms won't impact the need for standard-sized common areas. The increase in common areas is to bring them to the district standard, and that drives the size of the building, not the classrooms. There is no significant financial savings from cutting classrooms. You're not talking about millions of dollars. You're maybe talking about hundreds of thousands, if that. It would cost us more to redesign the building at this point in the process, and again, add more delay. And that's what we're getting used to, delay, delay, delay. And all the while, there's the great risk that we underbuild. Glenville and Ham Ave were both built to the capacity of the buildings at the time they were built. And they're a cautionary tale. Glenville, above projections and still growing. Hamilton Avenue, very close to projection, and a few kids here or there. And they do come, by the way, well after the start date. Again, I speak from what I know, and you've got a tipping point. In addition, it's cheaper to proceed with the existing project than start all over again. There's the financial burden, so stemming from that initial $2 million that was awarded already to the building committee, that's already been put in use. The countless people hours that have been spent in the district, and the very likelihood of increased cost of purchasing goods and services down the road, as opposed to what we know now in a guaranteed maximum price. We know what the building will cost to build, and we have a construction manager at risk, not the town at risk, but a construction manager. As the board was previously informed, that GMP is within the budget and actually still maintains those adequate reserves. There's also the impact on the students and the community. This is a project over a decade in the making. These promises have lasted forever. Pre-K gone, the kindergarten across the street. There are about 70 students that reside in the New Lebanon area that we could not accommodate if they chose to come back today. And if you want to talk about enrollment, know that construction is busy on this part of town. Just go look at the Greenwich Free Press, a proposed 120-unit apartment building at 777 West Putnam Ave just cleared an approval process at inland wetlands. If anybody doesn't know where that is, let me clue you in. It's the post road in Pemberwick, folks. Where are you going to send those kids? Glenville? Sorry, no space. Ham Ave? Sorry, building's full. But no, we don't have any seats anywhere. Okay. That's just one project happening here. And remember, we surveyed the community as part of the racial balance in 2012. We looked at alternatives. The choice for Greenwich was to focus on achievement for all students and rebuilding New Lebanon. That was one of the key pillars of our plan. A plan that was approved by the governor's own Secretary of Education and his Board of Education. A plan that has protected us from calls from forced redistricting and busing from the state. Seriously, go Google Fairfield and racial balance. And by the way, not that any one of us wants this, but those yellow buses you see driving around town, those are $90,000 each. So there is a cost in addition to nobody wanting this. And we'd have to eat that thanks to the state. And there have been questions about whether we could still get reimbursement under the diversity grant. We are pursuing the diversity grant. It is a state statute. This is not discretionary. This is a state statute. We've been very diligent in ensuring that we've met each and every requirement. We've been approved each step of the way. The state itself recognized the need to rebuild the school. The funding passed 3 legislative committees. But for the budget delay, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Our efforts will continue towards the full reimbursement. Again, this is a statute, not something where the governor has discretion. It is a matter of it clearing the legislature. And it has, by the way, in the bill that was passed. Other towns waiting on state funding are not waiting to start their construction projects. They are moving forward. And moving forward does not change our funding position under the state statute. We are best positioned to get the maximum state reimbursement, including the money we've already spent. We aren't giving up on state funding in any size, shape, or form by moving forward with this discussion. We are just trying to move forward with the construction. As to why we chose to go with new construction versus renovate, the answer is easy. 3 architectural firms. The firm that did the feasibility study, the firm and helped with the ed specs, the firm that has helped design the building that we're ready to build, and the firm that's doing our master planning process all agreed that a new building was the way to go. There were no salvageable parts. If anybody remembers the Glenville construction, the gym is the same gym. We couldn't do that. This gym is inadequate for the size of the building and just doesn't work. And we are trying to build a building that lasts 50 to 75 years. There's not a single element of this building you would save if you had the opportunity. The building committee actually specifically asked the architect to determine that. And the answer was a resounding nothing. The building has reached the end of its useful life. It's actually exceeded it. And let's not forget the state. The Office of School Construction sent a representative the 85 miles from Hartford on a surprise visit to the school. Surprise visit. Didn't tell us. Showed up, hey, I'm in the neighborhood. I'm going to stop by. We don't get a lot of that from the state, by the way. Probably because we're 85 miles away. During that visit, he acknowledged that the school is overcrowded and needs to be replaced. The Board of Education here, we've already agreed to that. At this point, we really need the BET to move this forward. If that means they want an indication from the RTM, so be it. But how long are we willing to wait? How much of a risk are we going to absorb? The October 24th expiration of the bids looms large.
Anyone else? Ms. Dayton?
I've heard a lot of misconceptions tonight, some of which are really surprising, like building this will be a $23 million tax increase. That's not how our taxes are calculated. I'm starting to worry about who represents us on the RTM. I think you need to go back and read how the mill rate is calculated. Second, Greenwich has not committed to cover the cost. We get the money on a reimbursement basis, so that argument is completely false. The RTM can pass this subject to later BET approval, and that is what they should do. Redesign has no benefit. We need the same number of classrooms, regardless of the magnet students. We need the same expansion of the common spaces. Renovation has already been ruled out. Why should Byram be the only community without a neighborhood school? That is not equity in education, and it's unacceptable. We don't want $100,000 per month increased cost from rebidding and delay. This will not win us points in the RTM, and I don't think anyone in town, any of our taxpayers, will be in favor of that. We have had so many public meetings on this particular construction project, more than any other. There is consistent favorable feedback from the community to build this project. It has not wavered in the terrible circumstances of our state budget. Witness the outpouring of support tonight. There were only 3 opposed. I think that's a good indication of the sentiment of the town. The RTM should represent the people here tonight and pass this forward. Thank you.
Ms. Erickson.
I agree with the spirit of Mr. Bernstein's motion, but I do have an amendment to his motion at the appropriate time if discussion is completed on his motion.
Ms. Apple, I'm sorry, Dr. Francis, you saw you with your hand beforehand. Okay. I'm going to take Ms. Applebaum, and then I'm going to.
Thank you, Mr. Bernstein, for that very well put together synopsis of what has gone on. I'd also like to recognize Representative Bacino, who's in the back of the room, and the entire Greenwich group of legislators who have worked incredibly hard up in Hartford to see this project continue and go forward. There is no doubt in my mind that we are well overdue putting a shovel in the ground for the New Lebanon project. This project has been a source of discussion for the entire 4 years I have been on the board. It has been extremely well vetted and is shovel ready within the expected budget. I find it difficult to accept that the ground might not be broken before my term ends in November. I would also like to address two things that were mentioned. One, having to do with racial balance. And I think Mr. Bernstein reflected to this as well. Simply put, a school is racially balanced when the school's makeup fits a prescribed percentage. We know what that percentage is here in Greenwich. To become racially balanced, however, does not require a forced choice via redistricting. It does not require a personal choice by families to choose a magnet school. A racially balanced school can happen organically as a community sees new residents who choose to purchase homes in a location with access to a brand new pool about to be completed and park, an easy commute to New York City, and a newly built school. Seldom will people choose a location with an overcrowded school with no regular access to a field for gym and off-site kindergarten. We need to have this project complete. Once it's done, there will be, just organically, potentially, racial balance. And last, I'd like to comment about fiscal responsibility. It is the buzzword in town, and during my nearly 20 years of community involvement, I have heard it repeatedly. Not moving forward now with the New Lebanon project would be the height of fiscal irresponsibility. Not starting immediately will result in greater costs for a known need. We have already spent nearly $2 million. Mr. Bernstein's laid out the costs that will be incurred if we do not break ground quickly. And we already know why a redesign is not in anyone's best interest. There is nothing fiscally responsible about any further delays to this project. I will be supporting moving this to the RTM.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So mine's a personal anecdote. My two children graduated from New Lebanon. My oldest son started kindergarten in 1995. He went to his kindergarten orientation in the spring and played in a playground that was on the other side of the kindergarten classes. And when he came in the fall, the playground was gone because they had to add 2 classrooms. There was overcrowding in 1995, and he was still in a K-1 class. So this age of this issue, I know a lot of folks think it started in the 2000s, but it was in the 90s actually.
Anybody? Ms. O'Neill?
I just wanted to reaffirm what Mrs. Applebaum said about racial balance. It doesn't have to mean moving people from eastern to the western side of town. It's having an infrastructure on this side of town that's attractive to young families moving in. That's what will create the racial balance. And the other point that Mrs. Von Brockel made, that the town owes a responsibility to all its people, and they must provide the infrastructure all across town for all its people and not just parts of town. So the town fathers, BET, owe a responsibility to the people of Byram to provide them with a building that is appropriate for the education of their children.
I have a couple questions, and I'm hoping Mr. Bernstein, as a person on the board, leading the subject for us can help. Peter, I think you referred to, and you said purposes of this is to kick off the discussion with the BET, and then you said something about an agreement to kick off the discussion. I wasn't sure what you meant. If you could help me with that.
I think the idea is to have the conversations happening with the BET and the RTM.
But was there, I thought I heard you reference that there was an agreement when we got to this place, we would kick off this discussion. Did I misunderstand you?
That is what people say happened last year or the year before when this was funded by the RTM, that no shovels in the ground. This is what people repeat to me, so I'm going to say it.
Okay.
No shovels in the ground, before funding, and if something does happen, we'll be back. So we're back.
So my second question is, if we don't get this money from the state, what's Plan B?
We are pursuing this project. We are not talking about Plan B. This is not about a contingency. That's a red herring.
Okay. I guess I gotta, so what we're really saying is the building committee or anybody doesn't have a Plan B if we don't get this money, right?
Well, let me make clear again the role of the building committee, Peter. This board voted on educational specifications. The building committee's job per town charter is to construct the building according to the educational specifications. If you want to make a motion that the building committee should do something different, then that's the board's purview to make a motion, go change the ed specs, go hire a new architect and start the process all over again. That's basically what you're suggesting.
Actually, no, I'm just trying to evaluate this motion. If we don't approve it or we do approve it, if we don't get the money, what's the plan? I think it's an important question, and for me, it shapes, I'm balancing, the proposal is to now go ask the town to release money that they may or may not get back from the state, versus the need that we're ready to go to build a building. I think it's I'm just trying to understand, if we don't do this, or if we don't start construction or we don't get the money, is there another, what would be the next thing we would do?
Well, there's two things to call into mind. One is, this is a state statute, again, not discretionary for the governor. It is up to the legislature to get a budget passed. So we're waiting, right? That's what we're doing. The second point is there is a risk to continuing to wait. That risk is the cost goes up. Whether that cost gets addressed by the state, they have limited their responsibility. It's capped in the letter that was sent to us approving us for the project at a specific dollar amount. So does the town want to take the risk that the cost of the project, which may increase $100,000 a month, are we willing to take that risk? That's what the BET needs to look at. They're the finance board. It's not our job to do that.
Okay, so I guess maybe I haven't attended all these building committee meetings. Has the building committee or anybody talked about what happens if Hartford removes this from the budget? Is the idea that we would what would we?
I'll just state again, the building committee's role is limited by town charter. The building committee builds the building according to the educational specifications.
I take, okay.
I guess that means speculation on the part of the building committee. That's not their job. That's our job.
Okay. I guess that means they didn't, right? They didn't discuss
It's not their role, Peter. I don't know how clear I can be about that.
Plan B isn't on the table. Yeah, there's no motion for a Plan B.
Okay,
There's no,
got it.
so we got to stick to the motion.
That's, I guess there is no Plan B is what I just heard, right?
There's no Plan B to be discussed tonight. We're here to discuss this motion. We can't change the agenda.
Okay. I heard one other assertion that I wasn't sure is true. And I don't know if maybe, I don't know if there's anybody here from the BET who can help us. I think I heard said that the money is fully available, it just needs to be released. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Mr. Mason, is that correct? Yes. So it just needs to be released. The money's available. Okay.
For the record, that yes was from Jim Lash, who's the chair of the BET Budget Committee.
Okay. Okay. Are there any other questions? Okay, I think the motion's on. I'm sorry, Ms. Erickson.
At this time, I'd like to make an amendment to Mr. Bernstein's motion, which is really a substitute resolution.
Okay.
The intent of this resolution, it is fairly lengthy, but the intent of this resolution is what would be submitted to the call. The RTM call deadline is this Friday at noon for the October 23rd meeting, which is the reason why we've had this special meeting here tonight. After I read the resolution, I just have a couple comments, if that's okay. Where the motion for the Board of Ed is to submit the following for the RTM call for the October 2017 meeting. Whereas the Board of Education hereby affirms the need for the New Lebanon School as currently designed and for which all necessary approvals have been secured. Whereas the project is approved by the Connecticut State Board of Education as meeting the requirements for state reimbursement under the Diversity Grant Statute. Whereas the ongoing budget impasse in Connecticut has caused uncertainty. Whereas the New Lebanon Building Committee advised the BOE on 9/14/2017 of likely cost increases and further delays should the project start date be extended beyond on or about October 24th. Whereas the BET conditioned the release of funding for the New Lebanon project in the amount of $34,359 million in the 2016-17 budget. Whereas the BET has given guidance that such conditions will not be released without an affirmative vote by the representative town meeting. Resolved, the Board of Education requests that via a sense of the meeting resolution, the RTM support the release of funding conditions so this long-needed project can commence. Further resolved, the BOE respectfully requests the BET to consider the release of the conditions at the earliest opportunity. The explanation to be submitted along with the RTM call would be as follows.
Laura, I think we're just going to vote on the resolution, so the explanos is in the record. But I think we need to deal with the motion that's before us. So let's deal with the motion, and then if you want to add something after that, but let's just...
Sure. The motion is to submit the following, including the explano, for the call on Friday.
I'm sorry, say that again?
So the motion is to submit the following language for the RTM call, which includes the resolution as well as the explano.
Okay, so it would not be different than Mr. Bernstein's motion. It would not be to compel action from the. This is a motion to submit this to the RTM with this, and it would not be a motion to compel action from the BET.
I don't think I can compel the BET to take
No,
an action.
but request action of the BET.
Based on the
request
guidance
action
we've
of the
received.
BET.
Correct. I
know, but it says that this is going to go to the RTM. It doesn't say this is going to also go to the BET.
Well, I believe we have a number of BET members here in the audience, and I believe that the BET members not only
just trying to be
read
clear
the call,
and
but they
specific.
attend. Yes. Can I just
Point of
continue
order?
with the
Yes.
explano?
Yes.
Should just point of order.
Yes, Mr. Bernstein.
It says further resolve, the BOE respectfully request the BET to consider the release of the conditions. Would that not compel us to forward this to the BET to say we've included this?
I'm happy to do that. Again, I see many members of the BET in the audience, but if we need to do a transmittal to the BET, that would be appropriate in my view.
Or if you want to modify it so that the motion is to submit to the RTM call and to the BET, that would make it a bit more clear.
Can I just read the explano and then we can
Yes.
take amendments?
Yes.
Sorry, it's lengthy, but my comments will be very brief afterwards. The explanation is the state budget impasse is wreaking havoc with municipal and school budgets across the state. In order to meet the call deadline, the BOE, depending on the action tonight, passed by a vote of blank to blank, passed the motion above at a special meeting on September 27th. At this point in time, it is not known what the resolution, if any, of the state budget will be regarding the reimbursement of the New Lebanon School project. The BOE received final sign-off from the Department of Administrative Services on May 10th. The letter would be attached, stating that the project qualifies for a grant up to $27,319,058 pending action by the General Assembly. The budget situation is in flux, and we will provide any update at the committee meetings and at the full RTM. So I just would like to make a couple comments. At this point, I think this is not only a moral decision, it is a financial decision. The BOE is a partner, both with the BET, the RTM, and the Board of Selectmen. When this project was vetted by those bodies, particularly the RTM, it was stated that we expected to receive $23 million in reimbursements from the state. That is in jeopardy, it appears, although as Mr. Bernstein says, that is clearly our expectation because that is how the statute reads. That is what was approved by the State Board of Education. Nonetheless, it's incumbent upon us to give an update to the RTM. The BET has requested that. I have no problem with that. I think the RTM needs to know the ramifications of a delay as well as an increase in costs. Mr. Walco has estimated that based on $24 million of hard construction costs and a 4% escalation, we're looking at $1 million there, plus whatever escalation there is on soft costs. And the real concern is that the children would not be in a school building the beginning of school year or by December break. It would be a full year. Again, I stress this is a moral and financial decision, and I think it is time to update the RTM, have the BET act. So with that, I would like to move this motion.
Is there a second? Dr. Francis? So let's just be orderly here. This isn't really an amendment, this is an alternate motion. So Mr. Bernstein, are you withdrawing your motion?
I'll withdraw my motion.
That motion is withdrawn. Now this motion is made by Ms. Erickson. Is there a second? Dr. Francis? Yes, please. Dr. Francis.
So I'm definitely not a lawyer, but I have a couple comments, and I think one to address, I think, something that's come up more.
One second.
Can I talk in this one instead? Okay. I think just to address a couple of issues, and then I think to come back to kind of the legalese, which I'm not. One is I don't think there's any question in my mind of shuttering a school. I don't think that makes any sense based on the numbers. So let's start. I'm totally in support of doing this and moving forward and getting this school built. I think that you can work numbers a lot of different ways, but I don't think we want to redistrict. I don't think we want to lose our neighborhood schools. I don't think we want to use up all of our ALP rooms, music rooms, art rooms, everything else to put kids into those classrooms and completely change our education in Greenwich. And I think to shutter a school, that's the kinds of things we'd be talking about, and even potentially not only redistricting, but having to split families to make our numbers 100% at every school that we would have left. And I don't think any of us want that. I think it's pretty clear that we need a new school. We've had experts telling us this over and over again, and we had that very recently with KG&D. It was very instructional, actually, to have them go building by building and tell us, this is a building you keep. Doesn't matter if it's over 100 years old. The construction is one that you would keep. They said, New Lebanon, no doubt, we completely agree this school needs to be rebuilt. So I don't think as a Board of Education or BET or RTM, we should be ignoring the advice of the experts that we have hired. I think, the question of how many extra rooms might we be adding because of the racial balance in those issues, those numbers are small. I don't think they're going to have any impact on the size that we need to build. And if you could argue and win that we would have to change one class, two classes, what is the amount of money, time, effort, waste of getting our kids into these classrooms that we would be doing to save what? Very little money, and in the end probably would end up losing money in the process of trying to make that change because of the delay and the reworking and everything that we would have to do. So I don't think I can hear anything logical that tells me we should do other than proceed with what I have heard actually Mr. Schur, our chair, say. Our job as a Board of Education is to go out and say, this is what our students need, this is what our town needs. We have gone through every step that we need to prove that, and it is those bodies in town that hold the reins and hold the money to figure out how to do that. So I can spend a lot of effort, which I have tried to do, to figure out, am I supposed to go to the RTM? Am I supposed to go to the BET? Who am I supposed to ask first? Who am I supposed to ask next? I feel like our job is to say, we need the money, our kids need the money, can you guys figure it out and make it happen? So hopefully this does the job, but if anybody feels like we haven't put the right words down or we haven't ordered them in the right way, then someone else should figure it out, because I think our job is to say this is what our children need, this is what our schools need, this is what our town wants, so please make it happen.
Any other further comment? Okay, I'm going to comment. I share the frustration, the long, tortured path this project has taken. I've watched every single step of it. To the best of my knowledge, everyone on this board supports a new Lebanon school. I don't know anybody here who doesn't, and I've never heard anybody on this board and the prior boards say they didn't. There may have been different debates about approaches and size and the rest of it, but everybody supports a new Lebanon project. Our board has made this clear and has made this clear repeatedly. We can debate what should have been built. It's not the question before us. Rehashing all the old arguments isn't useful. It's a fact, however, that we, the board, assured the town of Greenwich we would get an 80% reimbursement rate for the project that we proposed. It's very unfortunate that the governor and the legislature have failed to deliver on their commitments to the Greenwich community, particularly our children. We are now asking the town to take what in finance is called a naked position. Taxpayers own all the risk with full exposure if Hartford fails us. I think this is potentially irresponsible. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't go in for legal challenges with town bodies or the state government. This is governance through confrontation, not collaboration. It builds ill will, or I believe it will build ill will with the BET and the RTM, and the reference to state statutes. This is again a plan for confrontation and a long drawn-out legal action. I won't expose the kids of New Lebanon to more delay while legal fights are had. I'd rather do something positive. Our legislators have worked hard to get our project approved. They actually installed it in the so-called Republican budget that was passed. I hope that the governor will approve the budget. In the event that he doesn't, let's get Congressman Himes and Senator Blumenthal, both Greenwich residents, to appeal to the governor to support Greenwich. Let's get Senator Murphy to support Greenwich and stop this discussion from the governor about not honoring the commitments that were made to us as part of our racial balance plan and threaten to remove money from Greenwich. I'm very concerned we undermine the credibility of Greenwich schools when we do not honor our agreements. We made an agreement with the taxpayer approved the money, they approved the Greenwich share. It's time for the state of Connecticut to do the same. When we don't honor our agreements, this is ultimately bad for kids, undermines Greenwich public schools, and will make it difficult for us to advocate in the future. With that said, I have the sense amongst my colleagues, and we'll find out in a minute, that they want to move this forward. I have no intention of standing in the way of that, but I also cannot support a motion that I believe breaks faith with Greenwich taxpayers who we will need to continue to support all Greenwich public schools, not just one of the 15. Mr. Bernstein.
You specifically asked me what agreement I was referring to, and now you've hit it on the head. The agreement was to go back to the BET and the RTM for discussion. That's what this motion is. That's what this meeting has been about. The BET has requested that the RTM look at it. We are following the instructions and we are following their lead. We need to move this forward.
Anyone else? Ms. Dayton.
I take issue with breaking faith with the Greenwich taxpayers. We have pointed out the $100,000 of increased cost by delaying this project and waiting to see how the state budget works out. $100,000 a month. $100,000 a month. To continue, Mr. Scher, what will you do when we hit our 5-year projection of 315 students in this building? Will that not break faith with the Greenwich taxpayers? Will that not break faith with the Greenwich parents and the Greenwich students and the Greenwich teachers and the Greenwich administrators? What are you going to do when we hit that number? You're going to build a school anyway, but you will have people in satellite locations, in overcrowded classrooms, and you will have a detriment to the learning environment for how many years? 5 years? We're not going to accept that.
Any further discussion?
No, I was going to move the question.
Excellent. So the question is before us.
Well, I don't want to read the whole.
Yeah, I know, that's right. We have the motion. Are there any additional changes to the motion? Ms. Erickson? Okay. All those in favor of accepting Ms. Erickson's motion as presented? 7. All those against? Abstaining? That motion passes 7-0-1. Is there any other business before the board? No? With that, Mr. Bernstein, can I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
All those in favor? 8-0.